I went to the library. Oh, hello, booktube. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Marilyn, Maya, sometimes called the baby boomer booktuber. And if you looked at the teaser of this video, you might notice I'm dressed differently, but we had some technical difficulties and I had to buy a new microphone. So I hope you can hear me. Let me know in the comments. This is mostly a library book haul, and most of the books are from March Mystery Madness. So without further ado, as we say on BookTube, let's get at it. My first book is a series, and I don't usually read series, but I've heard this book lauded on BookTube for a while with the mystery lovers out there. And it's the Brian and May Peculiar Crimes Unit series. And I started the first one, I got it from the library, and it's Full Dark House by Christopher Fowler. He wrote all the books. And I was a little disappointed. I read the first, not even the first chapter, not even that. And I found out that the first chapter is called Out with a Bang. And what that means is one of Brian and May, the two detectives, crotchety old men, one is dying, or one died in a bomb blast. So I kind of was a little disappointed at that because we kind of know that what's going to happen to one of these detectives at the end. But then when I read the blurb, it started out that a present-day bombing through London claims the life of 80-year-old detective Arthur Bryant. For John May, it means the end of a partnership that lasted over half a century. And an eerie echo back to the Blitz of World War II, where they first met. Desperately searching for clues to the killer's identity, May finds his harassable old friend's notes of their very first case and becomes convinced that the past has returned with a vengeance. And I haven't had much luck with it, but I am interested in World War II historical fiction, especially if it's in a mystery. So I'm back to being happy that I picked it up, because I also picked up the second book, which is The Water Room by Christopher Fowler, and this is the second book in the series. And I'm not going to read you too much about it. From what I gather, the Peculiar Crimes Unit is a unit that was developed for unusual crimes or peculiar crimes. I don't know if it was, I'll find out if it was made because they wanted to give these two detectives something to do, but I'll find out. So it says they're living legends with a reputation for solving even the trickiest cases using unorthodox, unconventional, and often completely unauthorized methods. So what is this about? When the elderly sister of Brian's friend is found dead in the basement of her decrepit house in Kentish Town, they find themselves on the verge of making exactly that mistake. And I like this part of it. It said, according to the coroner, Ruth Singh's heart simply stopped beating. But why was a woman who rarely left the house fully dressed for an outing? And why was there river water in her throat? It sounds like the woman might have agoraphobia, and something that I'm familiar with. So yeah, I'm in it. Hope it's going to be a good presentation of it. So I'm going to talk about, well, I'm not going to talk about a book that I took out the third book. Well, I bought the third book, which was 77 Clocks. And I thought I would just mention it in this video because it's the third book of Christopher Fowler's series. And this one has to do with a mysterious stranger in outlandish Edwardian garb, defaces a painting in the National Gallery. Then a guest at the exclusive Savoy Hotel is fatally bitten by what appears to be a marshland snake. So this doesn't seem as interesting as the first two, but I did buy it, so I'm going to give it a chance. Now I'm going to get to a thriller, and I have to admit I'm almost finished with it. I was on the list at my library to reserve this book, and I thought I wouldn't get it for like months, but it's Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney, and I have to admit I almost finished it last night. Yes, it's not a perfect book. It's about a husband and wife, and they're both unreliable narrators, and then there's a third narrator that comes in, and basically they go away for a weekend to save their marriage, supposedly. And I found one thing interesting. The wife works at the Battersea Humane Society in London, and another book that I'm reading has to do with the Battersea Humane Society, so I thought that was interesting. And because they're unreliable narrators, they're not completely, they're both not likable. So that's a little bit of a problem. I like the way it's flowing. It seems to start out lightly, and then at every end of a chapter we get a scary moment, and it turns out that the place that they're staying is an old chapel that used to be a place where they would keep women that they thought were witches until they were burned at the stake. So that's scary already. Yeah, so I was a little scared with this, but I'm soldiering on and hoping that it's as good as everyone says it is. Already, there's things about it I don't like, and I'll get into that when I do my wrap up. Then I picked up a book, really by chance, called The Killings at Kingfisher Hall. I actually like the cover. It looks like it's a ruby ring. And when I saw the red, now that I can see, I saw the red lettering, and that's the way a lot of Agatha Christie's, it had her name, and that's the way a lot of Agatha Christie's books write her name in cursive. So it's written not by Agatha Christie, but by Sophie Hannah. And that, I found that out when I came back, but I should have known because the book looks really new. But anyway, I haven't had much luck with Sophie Hannah. I read two of her books that weren't the best mysteries that I've ever read, let's put it that way. But I'm going to give it a chance because I like the blurb, and it said, Hercule Poirot is traveling by luxury passenger coach from London to the exclusive Kingfisher Hill estate. Richard Davenport has summoned the renowned detective to prove that his fiancée Helen is innocent of the murder of her brother Frank. But Poirot will only have days to investigate before Helen is hanged. But there is one strange condition attached. He must conceal his true reason for being there from the rest of the Davenport family. Well, that sounds interesting, and I wonder why he has to conceal, but we'll find out. I finished reading, I won't talk about it too much, but I finished reading Louise Penny's Kingdom of the Blind. And it's a Three Pines mystery with Gamache, her Armand Gamache, and all the Three Pines cast. Again, I didn't love it. I'm not going to review it here, but I'll just say that I think Louise Penny tries to do too much in one novel, which is a very, I have to say that I'm a published author, not of a bestseller, unfortunately, but it's a temptation for authors to want to put, everything in a book, and it usually doesn't work out well. So we have to, as Ernest Hemingway said, kill your darlings. And there's a lot of poetry here that's, there's a lot of things that are going on. There's two alternative storylines. There's poetry, there's the relationships that are going on with the Three Pines people, but I'll just say it was a 3-star, but I'll talk about this more at the end of the month. Okay, is that all? I think that's all that I'm reading, except for I'm reading Endless Night by Agatha Christie, the real Agatha Christie with Brian and Bookish. And I just realized that this is an old copy. And I didn't really notice because the newer copies are not that gruesome. But this has a poor little owl with a knife in the owl's heart. And it says, "Go home." Or, yeah, go home, I think it says. And it's pretty gruesome. And I didn't even notice it. Don't want to talk too much about this book because we're reading it together. But basically, the narrator, this is probably a standalone, I'm pretty sure. The narrator is, and this is written in the 60s, and the narrator is a young man who's footloose and fantasy-free until he meets the girl of his dreams, and his dream is to build a house. Unfortunately, it's at Gypsy's Acre that's been cursed, and he's been warned about it, but he doesn't believe it. This has a lot to do also with Agatha Christie's feelings about young people and, what they're like in the 60s. So it has a little bit of a 60s vibe to it, and how older people, as Brian says, think about young people at the time. He also said it was sort of like a Scooby-Doo story. And I used to watch Scooby-Doo with my kids, and it's a cartoon where these group of people try to, sort of like a Nancy Drew type of mystery, but in a cartoon. And he says there's always like a scary house, and they're scared to go in, especially, I think, Scooby-Doo, who's a dog, if I remember correctly. But anyway, what's interesting about this book is that it says one of the best things Agatha Christie has ever done, and she thought so herself. And the crashing, not to say horrific surprise at the end is perhaps the most devastating that Agatha Christie has ever brought off. So I'm reading it very slowly, and it's kind of scary. It has a gothic feeling to it. So scary might be the theme, like I said, to this video. Now I'll get to the books in the long list for fiction. And I haven't been very successful with the long list for fiction. I think mainly because, well, there's two reasons. One is I don't read that much in contemporary literature. It's not my jam. Not that I've never read contemporary fiction, of course I have, but I guess I prefer the older books. I'll start with one that I DNF'd a whole bunch of them, and I'll talk about that at the end of the month. But one that I was going to DNF is Louise Erdrich, The Sentence. I hated the beginning. The beginning was unbelievable. It had to do with the main characters having been given a prison sentence for doing something really that was kind of unbelievable, with drugs and a dead person and transporting a dead person. And that's kind of in the beginning, so I'm not giving anything away. But Lindy, and you should check her out, at Magpie Reads, told me that it was going to settle down after that. And I gave it a chance, and I'm enjoying it. I have some, issues with it, but one thing the writing is superb, number one. But like I said before, is writing enough, good writing enough to keep you invested in a book? For me, it's not. But I am invested in this book because, number one, it takes place in the Twin Cities, where I lived for 5 years. And she really goes into talking about places that I've been to and places that I'm familiar with. So it's almost like a nonfiction book in that way. Yeah, there are ghosts, And I'm okay with that because it's not taking over the whole story. It is a main theme in the story, but it's, to me, it's not overdone. And also, I can tell she's a poet, Louise Erdrich is. And I like the way that her book is laid out, where there's titles to each parts, and it's not an experimental book in that way, and in some ways it is. Okay, so what does it say about it? It says that this was, it asks what we do for the living, to the dead, to the reader, and to the book. So this takes place in a bookshop. Now, I like books taking place in bookshops. And Louise Erdrich owns a bookshop called Birch Bark Books in Minneapolis. And I'm going to Minneapolis because two of my children live there, and my granddaughter lives there, and I want to go to, and that's a real store. That's a real bookstore. So I plan to go there. It has a theme of, Native American, indigenous books. If this is correct, they also have other kinds of books as well. And as a Puerto Rican, I have Caribbean indigenous blood, which is Taino Indian. And if you don't know anything about the Taino Indians, they if we use the word hammock and barbecue, they're the ones who, that's where the words originated from. So, yeah. And second thing I liked about it, third things I liked about it, was that it reminded me of Hawaiian culture. I've lived here 40 years in Hawaii. So I know a lot of locals or Native Hawaiians. Locals mean you don't have to be Hawaiian, but you're brought up here. And Native Hawaiians are usually mixed with other, because of the missionaries and all the terrible things that happened to the Taino Indians as well as Native Hawaiians. But it brings back, or it brings to me, a lot of things that are familiar to me, not only in maybe Puerto Rican culture, but also in local culture, which is like calling older people auntie. I'm always called auntie. And when I once complained about it to my Hawaiian friend, she said to me, "At least they didn't call you grandma." And I said, "Yeah, right." Anyway, yeah, there's a ghost, but I'm really tolerating this well so far. What I'm afraid of in contemporary books, and I had this experience with a few of the bestsellers last year, is that it might become didactic and try to teach me something, which is okay, but don't get out of the story and do it. So far, she hasn't done that. But if that happens, I'm going to like it less than I'm liking it now. Okay, that's enough for the sentence. Another one that I'm DNFing is Build Your House Around My Body by Violet Kupersmith, Vietnamese writer who lives in US right now. And the reason I'm talking about a DNF is because I'm pretty sure that a lot of people might enjoy this book. I tried to read it. I tried to read a chapter. And what it's about, it says a century of Vietnam's history and folklore come to life in this brilliant, sweeping epic that swaps spirits and shreds time like snakeskin. And that there's two women who are missing. The teenage daughter of a wealthy Vietnamese family in 1986, she loses her way in an abandoned rubber plantation while fleeing her angry father and is forever changed. And 2011, a young, unhappy Vietnamese American woman disappears from her new home in Saigon without a trace. The fates of these two women are inescapably linked, bound together by past generations, by ghosts and ancestors, by the history of possessed bodies and possessed lands. So if you're interested in any of those things, this book is probably your jam. And the author, Violet Kupersmith, is the author of the short story collection, The Frangipani Hotel. And she taught English with the Fulbright program in the Mekong Delta and was a creative writing fellow at the University of East Anglia. And she's lived in Vietnam. So this, if you're interested in any of the things that I've talked about, this might be for you. But for me, it's not. I don't like ghost stories, and I don't like, it's a story of revenge also, and I don't like revenge stories usually. Okay, and so beside the sentence, another book that I'm going to read is The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley Heller. And she's worked as an editor and head of a drama series at HBO. And this is her first novel. So it's a debut novel. It made the long list, which is already quite an accomplishment. And at first I didn't like the blurb, but listen to the first sentence and see if you might think that this might be a good book. Things come from nowhere. The mind is empty, and then inside the frame, a pear, perfect green, the stem a tilt, a single leaf. I thought that was a really original sentence. And what is it about? It's about a house on Cape Cod, where this family goes every summer for generations. And Ellie, she has a past, as we all do, and it's a story of a marriage, basically, and she has to choose between her first love and her happy marriage. But there's more to it than that, and it says it's a page turner, and so far I agree. It's a Reese Witherspoon book club pick, so I was a little wary of that, but you know, if it's a page turner, I like page turners. All right. Then I finished Louise Penny's Kingdom of the Blind, which I talked about. Okay. And I wanted to just say something that on the 24th is going to be my 1.5-year anniversary, and on booktube. And as I started when I was 70 years old, which is a little rare on booktube. And if you do anything for 1.5 years at 70, I guess I should congratulate myself. So I'm gonna be having a lot of changes going on. Well, not a lot, but one of the changes is that I'm gonna read less of books that I have to read for readathons. Everyone says this, but we end up doing it anyway. Now, March Mystery Madness, that's not hard for me. I was going to do a video every day, but I didn't because of life that happened February and March. Not good stuff, but it ended up good. All's well that ends well. And I wanted to read this book that I took out of the library, which is Rosamond Pilcher's Winter Solstice. And Gina, this is one of Gina Steiner's, or Stanier's. I have to say her name right. I love her. And she has a wonderful booktube channel, which I'll link below in the show notes. And this is a feel-good book. And I'm finding out that comfort reads are something, especially about women. And this is about a 60-year-old woman who moves to the country, adopts a dog, and develops a found family. And that sounds just delightful to me. In my life, I've experienced found family, and it's the best sometimes, better than a real family. Anyway, Winter Solstice, I bought in large print. I didn't buy it. I borrowed it from the library in large print, and I plan to buy a copy of my own because this is a book that I want to collect. Not that I'm going to collect all her books, but I'm going to look at all her books. And this one, from the first page, I wanted to own. I'm also doing another buddy read with Alba at Seriela, a fellow Boricua, Puerto Rican. And we read the first 2 parts of the trilogy, The Country Girls by Edna O'Brien. And this is Irish Readathon. And I'm starting this tonight. Well, I started the first chapter, but I'm going to continue. And the third part is Girls in Their Married Bliss. And so far, it's delightful. It's told, the first two stories were told in Kate's, Kate, one of the country girls' point of view. And this one is told in alternating points of view from her frenemy, Baba, which I talked about last time. And it just makes me feel good, the writing. And I want to read more of Edna O'Brien. So that's all I wanted to talk about, this library haul and what I'm reading and catching up with you. And if you haven't already subscribed, consider doing so. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate all my friends I've made here, all the commenters, all the booktubers, and anyone else who happens upon my channel. And click the notification bell if you'd be so kind, and comment and like. And until we meet again, my friends, aloha.